Have you ever witnessed a miracle? Do you know anybody that's ever witnessed a miracle? Have you seen a miracle? Do you know anybody that's ever been through a miracle? Stay tuned. By the end of this video, I will tell you the biggest miracle that I've ever experienced, hands down. That's what's next on My Best Version of Me. Hey everybody, welcome back to My Best Version of Me. My name's Coy. So we're talking about miracles today. Do you know what a miracle is? Well, let me bust out the definition. A miracle, a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency. Now, I interpret that as an act of God, basically. I think the very first miracle that I ever experienced was I was probably about the age of 11 or 12. I was living with my grandparents, and my mom. Okay, let me back up a little bit. When I was 10, my mom got arrested. So from 10 to 18, my mom was incarcerated. So I lived with my grandparents because they were the next. I don't know how it works, but they basically had custody of me. My mom was dating a guy. They weren't married, so he couldn't have custody of me. Custody had to go to my grandparents. So I was living with my grandparents. I was about 11 or 12 at the time. And I used to always go down to the neighborhood park and play basketball like every day. Well, one day I left my basketball on the front porch of my house and my basketball got stolen. So the one day I remember going down to the basketball court. I asked my grandpa, hey, can I go play some basketball? And he's like, you don't have a basketball? And I'm like, I know, but somebody there is going to have a basketball. You know, like we go down there every day. Somebody's going to have one. You know, I'll find somebody and we'll be playing. So, of course, I walked down to the park, you know, a few blocks away from my house. I walked down there. It's like the neighborhood park. You know, I lived in this community of houses, and there was like one park in the middle of all these community of houses. And all the little neighborhood kids used to go to that park and play basketball. So my first miracle was I went down to the basketball court, and of course, to my, what am I trying to say? I went down to the basketball court, and there was nobody there. And I mean, like, this is the first time ever that there was nobody there. Usually there's somebody there. So I remember sitting there on the bench right at the basketball court, and I was sitting there, and I was talking to God. I was having a conversation with God. My grandmother has been very religious. You know, my grandfather, not so much. He worked very, very hard his whole life. From Monday through Friday, he would work very hard. Saturday and Sunday, he was either golfing or fishing. My grandmother was the churchgoer. Sunday service, Sunday night service, Wednesday night dinner, Wednesday night service. She was the very religious one. She was the one that taught me about religion. So back to the park. I'm down at the park. I wanted to play basketball. Nobody's there. So I start talking to God, and I say, God, I said, you know, if you could just bring me a basketball, then that would be awesome. And I won't even tell anybody. That'll be our little secret. And, you know, I was thinking that God was just going to poof and make a basketball just appear right there. You know, so I was sitting here and I was really having this conversation with God. And I was like, look, man, like, just make it appear. You can even put it under the bench. And I'll just act like I just found it. I won't even tell anybody about it. I'll be totally shocked. Of course, no basketball appeared that day. No basketball appeared under the bench. I sat there for probably 5-10 minutes talking to God, asking, begging for a basketball. Nothing happened. So I says, all right, that didn't work. So I'm just going to get up and go home. So I got up. I started to walk home. And as I'm walking home, I hear ga-doon, 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 ga-doon. I hear somebody in the distance coming closer to the park, and they're bouncing a basketball because the bouncing is getting louder and louder and louder the closer they get to the park. I was so floored by this. I was so floored that God brought me a basketball that I didn't even play. I didn't even stick around. I just hightailed it home because I was so in awe and I wanted to tell somebody about my miracle. Okay, so let's fast forward several years into the future now. I've always been a pot smoker. I've smoked pot my whole life. It was a recreational drug. It was the drug that wasn't really bad. So people really didn't mind, even before it was legal, when it was still illegal, it wasn't really a big deal. I mean, there were so many other bad things that I could have been doing. So weed was never really frowned upon in my life. But then I ended up meeting a girl and fell in love with her. And we ended up having a relationship. Well, one of the things I knew about her is that she was an active meth user. Yeah, you heard me right. Methamphetamines. She used it. I knew it. She knew that I knew it, but I didn't care because at the time I met her through a job that I worked at. So I was like, okay, look, she has a job. She has a car. She has her own place. She goes to work. She pays her bills. So she's a functioning addict. So I figured, hey, what's the problem with that? And I told her, I don't like that stuff, but I don't care that you do it. Long as you don't try to push it on me, we won't have any problems. So she never pushed it on me. She actually never did it around me. She never talked about it around me. One day I asked her about it and I was like, hey man, I kind of wish you had some of that because I'd like to try it. And that was all it took. She gave me my first line. She smoked. She gave me my first line, and the very first time I smoked it was with her. And the very first time I shot up was with her. And that is when life took a huge turn, and I ended up going down the biggest, deepest, darkest rabbit hole that I've ever experienced in my life. So I remember one day we were sitting over at a friend's house, me, my girlfriend and I. She's actually the one that taught me that, my girlfriend and I. I used to always say me and my girlfriend. And my ex-tweaker girlfriend corrected my grammar and said it's my girlfriend and I. So anyway, my girlfriend and I are sitting over at a friend's house one day. And we're just sitting there. We're high as a kite. And we're just shooting the crap, just shooting it up with some friends. And not the drugs. I mean, like, we're just talking and just having a conversation among a whole bunch of people. And we're all sitting there getting high together. And everybody's talking about, like, oh, I've stayed up for a week. I've stayed up for 2 weeks. One guy was trying to tell us that he stayed up for a month straight. And I was like, you know what? That's BS, dude. Like, nobody has ever, I don't care how good the stuff is. Nobody has ever stayed up for a month straight. So my girlfriend and I took that as a challenge to see how high we can get and just how long we can stay up. So we went out there and we scoured the area for the best stuff we can find, the purest stuff, uncut, just boom, blow your head back type of stuff. So we get some of this stuff and we get high as a kite, and my girlfriend and I decide, you know what? Let's stay up as long as we can together. That way she witnesses me, I witnesses her. So there's two of us that witness each other, that we both stay up for a long time. So nobody can argue with us about how long we stayed up. So to make a long story short, we were up for 10 days straight. 10 days straight. And the only sleep we got was 4 hours of sleep in 10 days. Here comes miracle number one. I remember I had just gotten a brand new job at this restaurant. I was a dishwasher. And the dishwashers, the chefs, they would always work open to close. So since I wanted to impress the managers and impress the bosses, I was, every time they asked me, hey, Coy, can you work open to close? No problem. Let's go for it. And plus, I was high as a kite. So I was like, yeah, let's go. So I was only at the job for like 3 months. And this was during our 10-day awake period that we had no sleep. So one day I get off of work after just pulling a double, and I'm on my way home from work. And I remember turning into my neighborhood. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like 3 blocks away from home. I'm tired. I'm going to go ahead and take my seatbelt off, kick back a little bit, because I'll be home in about 2 minutes and it'll be all good. I don't even remember getting tired. I don't even remember feeling tired. I just remember feeling so stoked that I was like, yeah, it's my weekend now. Just got done doing a double. I'm high as a freaking kite. I'm ready to go home and party it up with my girl and just God knows whatever, just party it up and just do whatever. And I remember taking that seatbelt off, and the next thing I know, I wake up in the next thing I know, it all of a sudden, it like, in slow motion, it was like I just hear this in slow motion, and it wakes me up. I wake up and I'm like, what the heck? That noise that I heard was my windshield shattering at 85 miles an hour because I fell asleep behind the wheel. My foot went all the way down to the gas, went all the way down to the floor. My truck sped up to 85 miles an hour. I came around a turn and hit another lady at 85 miles an hour, head-on collision. That lady, this is not the miracle, that lady walked away with no injuries whatsoever. Me, on the other hand, I had broken almost every single bone in my body. I had to get cut out of my truck. I had to get ambulance to the closest school, where I was picked up in a helicopter and life flighted to Seattle, where I was in intensive care for the longest time. The doctors did not think I was going to make it. They told my mom that there's probably like a 50% chance that I am not going to survive that first night because I was internal bleeding and they could not stop the bleeding. Miracle number one, I survived that accident. They told me that I was not going to walk again for 18 months. No, they told me that I wasn't going to walk again for a year. And they told me that I couldn't work again for at least 18 months. I walked by myself in 53 days. I was back at work washing dishes 90 days after the accident. Miracle number one. So I remember one day I was sitting in the hospital recovering from the accident, and I was just sitting in there by myself. I didn't have any visitors this day or anything. And I remember sitting there watching TV, and this show, American Ninja Warrior, came on. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this show and I'm like, dude, this is an amazing show. This is an awesome show, man. I love this. Like, this show was made for me. And I remember just sitting there, just watching this show. And I'm just like, God, I love this show. This is awesome. And I started thinking, like, you know what? I want to be on this show. I think I could do this. You know, I think I could. I was watching these guys jumping from obstacle to obstacle, hanging from pull-up bar to pull-up bar, going up all these different obstacles. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, this show was made for me because I've always been active. I've always been into sports. I've always been into martial arts my whole life, track, field, everything. And I thought, man, dude, like, totally forgot that I was broken. My muscular body was broken. Totally forgot that I was in the hospital recovering from a head-on collision. Totally forgot that I was an active meth addict. But yet, I wanted to go on American Ninja Warrior. And I remember after they released me, I remember coming home, sitting here, watching American Ninja Warrior on TV, and I'm just like, yeah, man, yeah, this is for me. Yeah, I'm gonna get on this show. I'm gonna find out how to do it. I'm gonna get on this show. And all it took was for me to recover just a little bit. And I remember it was Super Bowl Sunday. My mom said, hey, Coy, here's some money. Why don't you go to the grocery store and pick up some things for dinner? You know, we'll meet up here in a few hours. We'll watch Super Bowl together. You know, I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome, Mom. Let's go. So my mom gave me some money. I took off. What did I do? I didn't go to the store. The first thing I did was hit up my old Connect and went and picked up some dope and started smoking again. I hadn't even been out of the hospital for a month, and I'm back with a pipe in my mouth, smoking dope again. I couldn't believe it. I was Even my drug addict friends were like, Coy, what in the F are you doing, dude? Like, you just got out of the hospital. Why are you doing this again? You had all this time clean in the hospital. You should just drop this. You should drop all of us and leave us behind and just go on with your life. And I was like, no, dude, you guys are my friends. Friends, like, no, we're going to kick it. Biggest mistake of my life. So I remember that night that I was getting high with my friends. I couldn't go home. I lived with my mom. My mom lives with me. I couldn't go home. There was no way I can go home because I knew my mom would know that I'm high. So I just stayed out all night. I just stayed out and hung out with friends all night long. And of course, that was a dead giveaway because anytime I didn't come home, my mom knew why. She knew I was out there getting high. But I thought I was smart and I thought I was fooling her. And I thought I could tell her, oh, this and that's going on. Oh, a friend needs my help. Oh, I'm going to stay out all night and I'm going to help this friend out. She knew it was BS. She knew what I was doing. She knew I was out there getting high. And I remember, like, I had to quit watching American Ninja Warrior because every time I would watch it, it would remind me that if I can stop doing drugs, get my head out of my butt, and get in shape, I might have a chance of being on that show. But since I was in still active drug addiction and I had my head way up my ass, there was no way that I even wanted to watch that show because it reminded me of how I was totally screwing up my life all for drugs. So I remember I came home one day, I grabbed all my stuff, and I went to go live with a friend and her boyfriend in another town close by, but, another town away. And I remember sitting up in their house with them one night, and this is after COVID, after all that, and they were sending out those checks to everybody. Everybody was getting those stimulus checks for thousands of dollars and whatever. And I remember this couple lived in a really nice house, and they were both getting stimulus checks up the yin yang. But did any of those stimulus checks go to bills or rent or any of that? No, it all went to dope. They did heroin and meth. I only did meth. I wasn't into heroin. It wasn't my thing. I had a lot of friends that were into it, but it just wasn't my thing. And I remember sitting at their place one day. We had all just gotten really high. I'm in my bedroom. They're in their room. We're all just kind of partying, doing whatever. And I remember having a conversation about like, hey, you guys, like, when is the rent due here? And they're like, oh, it's due in like half a month. And I was like, half a month. Okay. Do you guys have any way that you're going to pay the bills? Like, I still had my job, all this stuff, they didn't work. They were just, deadbeats, and they were like, oh yeah, we're going to have a garage sale. We're going to sell everything that we have and pay the rent. That didn't happen. They put signs up. I even helped them put signs up, garage sale, garage sale. People were coming by the house asking, where's the garage sale? They were in the house arguing about who's going to go get more dope. How are we going to go get more dope? We can't afford it. You don't have a job. You don't have a job. Well, maybe Coy will help us. Nuh-uh. I ain't helping because I got to pay for my own drug addict, I got to pay for my own drugs. So I remember just while they were fighting one day, I remember just nonchalantly packing up my stuff, putting my stuff all back in my Jeep and just leaving. I didn't say bye. I didn't say nothing. I just remember looking at the girl, at my friend. She was arguing with her boyfriend. And I remember right before I left, me and her had eye contact. And it was basically me looking at her, telling her goodbye. She looking at me going, what the F? Where are you going? But she can't talk to me because she's fighting with her boyfriend. And I just took that as my cue to like, this is my cue to leave. So I just packed up my Jeep, jumped in my car, jumped in my Jeep, started driving away. And I thought, what am I doing? Where am I going? I mean, I'm so tired of this. Like, what am I going to do with my life? I mean, is this really what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I knew that I didn't want to do meth my entire life. I knew that it was just an experimental drug. And I know everybody says this. And I knew that. And I was like, I just want to try it. I want to do it for a little bit, party, and then I want to get out. So now I wanted out. I was done with it. The quality of it was crap. It wasn't working for me anymore. I was smoking, I was snorting lines, I was shooting up, and I just wasn't getting high anymore. And I said, you know what? I'm done with this. I packed up my Jeep that day. I drove to my mom's house, and I walked into my mom's house and told her, Mom, I need help. I need help. I don't want to do this anymore. I thought that I can quit on my own, but I obviously know that I'm so far into this that there's no way that I can quit on my own. So I told my mom, I says, Mom, I need help. And what did my mom do? She helped me. She gave me a phone number and told me to call this phone number. It was a treatment place. Long story short, I voluntarily went into treatment, graduated with honors, came out of treatment. I was out of treatment for 2 months and was right back in the streets doing dope again. Doing it again. I couldn't understand it. I was like, what? I've got to be the stupidest person out there. I couldn't understand. Why am I doing it again? Why am I hurting my mom again? Why am I hurting myself again? Why am I hurting my family and my friends? Well, I wasn't hurting my friends because my friends were all doing the same thing I was doing. So I remember after I started using again, I remember it was about 3 weeks later, because I think every time I went out and used, every time I relapsed, it would be a big relapse, and then I would get clean. And then I would go back out, and it would be a smaller relapse, and then I would get clean. And then this time I went out, and I went back out for about 3 weeks. And this was the last time that I went back out. I went out for 3 weeks, and same thing. Quality of the dope was crap. The people that I was getting it from were very, very, very shady. Shadier than the friends that I was getting it from before. Now I'm just getting it from random people, random strangers, random stuff. So I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's in it. And I'm doing it. I'm shooting it up. I'm snorting it, whatever. And I remember after about 3 weeks, I was like, you know what? I'm done with this. I don't want my mom to die thinking that I don't want my mom to die and think that her son is a tweaker. I know my mom raised me way better than that, and I didn't want her to die thinking that my son is a tweaker and I am the worst parent out there. I wanted to show her how good of a parent she was. So after 3 weeks, I came back home and I told my mom, look, Mom, I'm done. I'm done. I'm really done this time. And she says, Coy, she says, how do I know you're done? I've heard this so many times. Well, my mom also knows that inside my Jeep, I had a little lockbox, like one of those little realtor lock boxes that they put on the outside of doorknobs, and you put your little code in, you open it up, and then you put the keys in there to get to the house. Well, I had one of those on the inside of my Jeep clipped onto my door handle, so it cannot be removed unless you knew the code. That was where I put all my dope in it. And if I ever got pulled over, I would just say to the officer, hey, one of my friends put that on there. I don't know the code to there. I can't access that thing. They would have to get a warrant. I knew this. They would have to get a warrant to have another officer come in and cut that off or open it up or whatever. And I knew that. So I purposely clipped it on my door handle on the inside of my Jeep. And that's where all my dope was at. So my mom said, Coy, how do I know that you're for real this time? You played with my emotions. You told me you wanted to quit. You didn't quit. You told me you wanted to quit again. You didn't quit. How do I know that you're really going to quit? So I says, Mom, you know my lockbox? I went out to my Jeep. I got the lockbox. I got all the dope out of there. I had just re-upped a few days before there. So I was sitting on about a half an ounce of just pure meth. Like, well, what I thought was pure meth. Some of the best stuff I've ever had. Yeah, right. So I went in there. I pulled out a half an ounce of that stuff. I came into my mom's house, walked right into the kitchen, turned the water on, and took that bag and dumped it right down the drain right in front of her, Meanwhile, tears are just rolling down my face. I can't believe I just did that. I'm crying because I just dumped my dope. I'm crying because I'm emotional. I don't know what's going on. And I'm crying because I want to be out so bad and I don't know what to do. I told my mom, I says, Mom, I says, and now granted, I had already been through treatment. So I wasn't going to go through treatment again. And I didn't even think treatment would take me back again. So I already been through treatment. And I told my mom, Mom, you've got to help me. I need God in my life. I need something huge. I need a big force that could just make me quit. My mom says, you know what I do? She says, I watch this guy on YouTube. His name is Joel Osteen. She says, check him out. You might like him. And that was it. That was the end of that conversation. So while she was at work one day, I was sitting here at home by myself. And I says, you know what? I'm going to look that guy up. Joel Osteen. So I went to YouTube and I typed in Joel Osteen and I saw a whole bunch of videos that he had on his channel, on his church channel, because he's the senior pastor of Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. So I started watching his videos and sorry, I get emotional over this part because this I get emotional because of how real it is. And I started watching his videos and I can hear him. I mean, it was like he was talking to me. You know, he's probably talking to millions of people, but that day, Joel Osteen was talking to me. He was talking to me. Okay, let me back up just a little bit because before I found Joel Osteen, when I was in treatment, I found out that I was supposed to be going to NA meetings. I didn't know that. I just thought I'd go to treatment 3 days a week, make sure that I passed a drug test, and everything was good. Well, one day when I went to go see my counselor, he says, well, do you have your slip with all your NA signatures? And I says, NA? What is that? What meetings? And he says, yeah, you're supposed to be going to meetings. I didn't know that. Nobody ever told me that. So long story short, I was going to meetings. I was going to NA and everything. And NA was working sorta. The reason I say sorta is because, and this is just my experience now. Full disclaimer, this is my experience. So this is my experience. Take it with a grain of salt. But my experience with NA is NA gets a lot of people off of drugs. It gets millions and millions of people off of drugs successfully. But where I was going to NA, I found a lot of people that were using it as a crutch. They were clean for so long, and then life gets hard, and they decide to go out and start using again. And then they come back to the meeting when reality kicks them in the butt or whatever, and they're like, oh, I need to go back to the meeting. And then they come back to the meeting, and they start the process all over again, you know, with the white key tag, starting all over again. And for me, you know, for every addict, they always say, you know, if you're an addict, you know, 90 meetings in 90 days. You got to do that. That's how you have to start. 90 meetings in 90 days. I couldn't do that because 90 meetings in 90 days, that was a lot of talk about dope. And I didn't want to talk about dope. I didn't want to be around dope. I didn't even want to hear the word dope because it would make me want to go out and use again. And sure enough, the times that I relapsed out of NA and out of treatment was because all we did was sit around all day long and talk about dope, tell our horror stories, listen to other people's horror stories, all that stuff. Dope. For somebody that didn't want to do dope, I was hearing it a lot and seeing it, all these things a lot, and it just made me want to go out and use. So now, fast forward, after finding Joel, I was just mesmerized. I couldn't turn him off. I could not turn him off. Like I said, every video he was talking to me. And then one video I heard, He was talking about removing the labels that society puts on you. He said that God didn't create any addicts. God's children, I don't know exactly how he said it, so sorry if I butcher it, but basically he was saying God's children are children of God and they are perfect in every way. They go through their ups and downs just like everybody else does, but they are perfect in every way, meaning God doesn't have any children that are addicts. He has children that are addicted to drugs, but they are not addicts. You see what I'm saying? So he was trying to tell me that you have to remove the label, because I didn't want to be one of these people 20 years down the road that was still going to NA because that was the only thing that can keep me from doing drugs. I knew that I was stronger than that. I knew that my head was so much stronger than that. And I knew that I didn't have to rely on Narcotics Anonymous in order to live a clean life. I knew I could do it on my own, but everybody said no. Everybody says you have to have Narcotics Anonymous. Without NA, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. And Joel kept telling me that's what people are going to say because they don't know any better. They're going to tell you that. But you don't need those people's approval. The only approval you need is from God. And God says that you are not an addict. So remove that label. So what I did to make a long story short was I resurrendered my life to Christ. I gave my life to Christ, even though I had done it. I'd actually probably given my life to Christ 10, 15 times in my lifetime. But I resurrendered my life to Christ. But this time I took it a step further. Instead of just giving my life to Christ, I decided I'm going to surrender my whole entire life to Jesus Christ. Meaning my thought process was going to change. My physical things, physical attribution, what I was doing physically was going to change. Mentally, spiritually, everything changed. Meaning that if there's a lot of Christians out there, they call themselves Christians, but when you see them upset, all of a sudden the regular person comes out and they start giving people the bird in traffic or cursing people out that treated them poorly, but yet they go to church every Sunday and they call themselves Christians. I wanted to be a Christian through and through, all the way across the board. I wanted to think it, live it, breathe it, everything. So that's what I mean when I said that I completely surrendered and gave my life to Christ, meaning that he calls the shots in my life. I don't worry about anything now because God is in control of my life. God is my sponsor. I don't get triggers anymore. I don't get cravings. I haven't relapsed. Next month on September 11th, I'll have 2 years clean. And I have already submitted my video for American Ninja Warrior and turned in my application for American Ninja Warrior. I am just waiting for the phone call to let me know when I got to go and compete. Everything is turning around in my life. Everything is working out. My relationship with my mom is better than it's ever been before in my life, ever, hands down. Even before I got on drugs, my relationship with my mom is the best. And I owe it all to Joel Osteen and Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. Because the things I learned from Joel, I don't even know where you can learn these things at. I mean, I guess through your church, find an active church. And Joel's church is so amazing. I've decided that I am actually going to move to Houston. I live in Washington State right now. I'm going to move to Houston this winter because, one, I want to be active in Lakewood Church. I'm already a member. I'm a member of their church. I've talked to the people there at the church. Some of they know a little bit, just a very, very little bit about me, just from the people I talked to. I bought some books. I bought a new Bible, stuff like that. And I've given my testimony to one of the ladies there, and she kind of remembers me from before. Anyway, so that's what I'm going to do this winter is I want to move to Houston. I want to move there. I want to become an active member in Lakewood Church. And also, in Houston, Texas, there's a Ninja Warrior training gym called Iron Sports Gym. And that's where a lot of Ninja Warriors that have been on the show train at. That is also in Houston, Texas. So God told me the next chapter of your life is in Houston, not in Washington. So stop trying to make things work in Washington because it's not going to work in Washington. Joel also talks about how God will close doors. No matter how hard you try for something, he'll close that door if it's not his will for you. Well, me surrendering my life to God means that I don't worry about things in my future. I don't worry about money. I don't worry about things that stress me out because I know that God is behind the scenes. God is calling the shots. God is making a way. God is preparing my future. And trust me, my future is going to be better than I can ever imagine it is. And, you know, I want to be on American Ninja Warrior. That's totally what I want to do. But I've also told God that if that's not your will for my life, then that's fine with me. That's okay. Because I trust you and I know that whatever you have planned for me is going to be better than anything I can ever imagine, even being an American Ninja Warrior. So the other day I'm sitting at home, I'm watching YouTube, and this girl comes on, and I don't remember her name, but I'm watching her video, and she starts talking about, has God ever nudged you to share your experience? God has nudged me plenty of times. I've always wanted to help people the way people have helped me, and I've prayed about it and said, God, let me be able to help somebody the way people have helped me. And God told me I have to go to Texas. I mean, like, he didn't physically say, Corey, you got to go to Texas. But a little voice inside, and I knew it was God, told me the next chapter of your life is in Texas. You got to go to Texas. That's where it's all going to happen for you. So that's where I'm going. I'm going to go to Texas. It's all going to be awesome. I can't wait to get there. But I told God, that's great. But part of having faith is believing in God when you don't know or you haven't seen any results. So I've been praying and begging and asking to get on American Ninja Warrior. I've been praying to God, let me get on that show. I want to be able to help people, da-da-da-da-da. But God, I also want to tell you that if I never become an American Ninja Warrior, that's okay with me because I know that whatever you have planned for my life is better than anything that I've ever imagined. And maybe I will be an American Ninja Warrior. Maybe I will get on the show. Maybe that's God's will, but maybe it's not. I won't know until God shows me what he wants me to do. And until then, I'm going to keep the faith and I'm going to keep true to my word and to myself. I'm going to please God and I'm going to make sure that I'm living the life that he wants me to live and I'm doing the things that he wants me to do. All right. So now we're going to talk about miracle number 2. We're going to keep this short and sweet. Miracle number 2, everybody always says when you quit doing drugs, you need NA. You have to go into NA. You got to do it. My sponsor, I should say my old sponsor, has been in NA for almost 30 years. And that's the only way that he can stay clean. And that's fine. That's what he knows. That's fine. But I knew in my heart, I knew through and through, I knew in my bones that I was not made to be going to NA meetings for the rest of my life. I knew that I was strong enough to beat it, and I did by surrendering my life to Christ. I surrendered my life to Christ, and I no longer think about dope. I'm not triggered by dope. I don't have dope cravings. I could see dope on TV. I could see it on the news, and it doesn't affect me one bit. It doesn't give me cravings. It doesn't do anything. When I was going to NA, you couldn't even say dope without me wanting to go out and use it. And I know that the reason I am free, 100% free, is because of God. God has given me my life back. God has removed the label of addict, and now I am just a child of the Most High God. And I could do all things through Christ. And I have, and I will. I want to read something really quick. Joel Osteen said this the other day, and it totally caught my attention. If you don't distance yourself from the wrong people, then you're never going to find the right people. And that's why I'm moving to Texas, because I have to distance myself from all these people over here. I want to start over. I want to start over. I've already started over, actually. And I want to just go to Texas, and I want to see the life that God has for me in Texas, because I know that it's going to be better than anything that I've ever imagined. So if you're having a hard time, if you're on the fence about Christ or not Christ, or if you're still battling with drugs and you're still battling with alcohol, whatever it is, give it up to God. Let God know. You don't have to be a wizard prayer person. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to know how to pray. God already knows what you're going to say before you say it, because he made us. We are all children of the Most High God. So give whatever your problems are, give it to God. Pray about it. Just say, God, look, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. Help me. Help me, God. And he will help you, because he doesn't know how to not help us. He will help you, but you have to believe that he will help you. You can't just say, okay, God, I don't want to do drugs anymore, and then still be talking to your old drug friends and still doing old things in that life. You have to completely stop it all. I don't talk to any of those people anymore. I started working out. I started eating right. I started sleeping right, everything. And through me doing all the right things in my life, God sees that and he's like, blessings are coming. Blessings are coming. And I cannot wait to see the blessings that God has for me. Thanks for watching. My name is Coy. This is my best version of me. I love you guys. Peace out. If this video resonated with you at all, if you found yourself being connected with me, however, if this video vibed with you at all, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can find out next time I release another video. And comment below. Let me know, what miracles have you witnessed before? Talk to you guys later.